Welcome to the Wolverine Confidential Podcast, brought to you by Corewell Health. I am Andrew Kahn.
I'm Ryan Zook.
And I'm Aaron McMahon.
The Michigan football team returns home to host Central Michigan on Saturday. What have the Wolverines been saying in advance of this matchup? How will they fare without their head coach on the sideline? We answer those questions and give you our predictions for the game coming up on Wolverine Confidential. All right, guys, good to be with you here. Late Wednesday night, actually, September 10th, but you're hearing this on September 11th in advance of Michigan's home game against Central Michigan, coming back home after the Oklahoma loss. Wolverines are 1-1, still ranked in the top 25. Aaron, did we ever ask you still rank Michigan? Did you rank them?
I did. I had them 20. I gotta check. 24th, I think, this week. Barely hanging on. But
And what are they? 23?
Yeah.
At 23. Okay. So yeah, they'll host Central Michigan, the Chippewas, at noon. And that seems to be the kickoff time. That's what we got. I was expecting 12:05, 12:10, at least 12:01, but it seems like it's noon. Big Ten Network if you're watching on TV. First order of business is reminding listeners that Sherrone Moore will begin his 2-game suspension on Saturday as part of a school-imposed punishment for his role in the 2023 sign stealing saga. While it's more customary for coaches to sit out games at the start of the season, Moore was finally willing to answer why his suspension was for games 3 and 4. And he said that he and school administrators essentially decided it would be less disruptive to the team if he delayed his absence. Like, hey, it's a new season. We got, new coordinator, we got a new quarterback, new players, everything. I want to be here at the start of it. And then I'll take my suspension, which is just a further kind of just, middle finger to the NCAA. Like, yeah, I'll take a suspension, but I'm going to do it when it's most convenient for me. Doing it for like Central and, I don't know, one of the Northwestern or something later in the year might have been even more, but so be it. That is the reasoning he gave, and his replacement, as we predicted, is associate head coach Biff Poggi. Who is Biff Poggi? Aaron, Ryan?
Well, he's a familiar name, I think, to maybe dedicated Michigan fans. He's been around the program a little while now. He came back this year as associate head coach. He had 2 different stints with Michigan under the Jim Harbaugh regime. He was around early in Jim's tenure and then came back after a few years, and he was on that team when Michigan won a national championship. So he's actually an interesting guy. I mean, he has an interesting background. He's 65 years old from Baltimore, Maryland. He was started out as an assistant coach at the college level. Ended up, maybe perhaps best known as a high level high school coach in the state of Maryland. Won some games. He was at St. Francis for a while. He's a former hedge fund manager who made a lot of money, who decided to pour that money into the high schools in Baltimore. Which interesting story. I mean, there's an interesting background there. He got to know Jim Harbaugh fairly well because one of his son, Henry, ended up on the Michigan team a few years back during the early days of the Jim Harbaugh era. So he got to know Jim really well, confided in Jim. Jim brought him on the staff, and here he is. He's going to be the interim head coach for the next 2 games. As you said, that starts 12:01 a.m. Saturday. So Sherrone will not be allowed around the team beginning then. And that will conclude at 11:59 p.m. on Saturday, September 20th, after the Michigan plays in Nebraska. So effectively for the next, beginning Saturday, it'll be like a 7-day thing where Biff will be the head coach for those 2 games, and then lead up there into the Nebraska game. So interesting setup here. I think we talked about it a little bit last week, just because the NCAA changed the rule. I think last summer that basically said if a coach is suspended for a game, they wouldn't be allowed around during the lead up. Well, that wasn't necessarily the case here. Sherrone was allowed. He was allowed around the team this week. He is involved in practices. He's helping prepare the team. But beginning again 12:01 a.m. Saturday, Sherrone will be serving the suspension.
And just before we get to Ryan, just to clarify, Poggi he came back and was 21 and 22. He was on the Michigan staff. So the start of that turnaround, when they finally beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten championship, went to the playoff 2 years in a row. And, I think some of his fingerprints were certainly on the culture that, then carried them to the 23 national championship. But by then he was at Charlotte, had the 2 years there that didn't go particularly well in the one loss column. He was fired before last season even ended. But yes, now rejoined the staff.
Yeah, I feel like Andrew, you should be telling us more about Biff because you're writing a story about him on MLive.com for Thursday.
It is true. Yeah, I mean, Aaron hit on a lot of the key points. He is an interesting guy. I mean, just his dress. We talk about Bill. People know Bill Belichick. Trimming the sleeves on his long sleeve hoodies. Poggi, would just truly sleeveless. Full arm exposure as a head coach, and it was a kind of a ratty, just old T-shirt that he wore to do this with. But yeah, seems to be a guy that's kind of, I don't know, like a Yoda type figure that's just espousing wisdom to players and coaches alike. So no, everyone has a lot of great things to say about him. It's not someone like I've interacted with very much, if at all, during his various stints at Michigan, kind of a more behind the scenes kind of guy. But the main reason he was chosen is kind of what we speculated about on the last episode of Wolverine Confidential, is that it allows everyone else to stay in their lane. Chip Lindsey, offensive coordinator, has head coaching experience, can continue to just call plays and coordinate the offense. Wink Martindale, veteran coach, many years coaching football, can just coordinate the defense, special teams. Everybody else you could think of, could still just do that. And now you've got the right-hand man, the guy that Sherrone Moore says follows him around all the time in his meetings, taking notes, can just continue to do that. So, or can just fill in, and kind of just do his Sherrone Moore impression.
Yeah, it's an interesting setup, and as you pointed out, it doesn't disrupt much, right? Like, the coaches are gonna continue to do what they were doing. I don't wanna call Biff a figurehead because that's not accurate. He will still have a say in things, and I'm sure when it comes to whether to go for it on 4th down or punt or kick, whatever, he will have the final say, and he will have to manage some things, but you're right. Other than that, it should be a well-oiled machine. I mean, Michigan's already done this twice now. They've got experienced guys at all coordinator roles. I mean, guys that have done it for a very long time. Chip obviously has had coaching experience himself, so there's other hands that can kind of fill in if needed. But I mean, look, Biff's been a head coach before, as you said. He spent the last 2 seasons at Charlotte. He's done this. He knows what it takes. So in theory, it shouldn't change much. It shouldn't look much different. Really, the only difference on Saturday, especially if you're watching on television, is you're just going to see more television shots of Biff Poggi than you have in the past.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm most excited about the post-game press conference afterwards. With I would assume that we would get him and just to see what he has to say about filling in and just his perspective on the team in general without Sherrone Moore. But and who knows, maybe that fans will appreciate his play calling and aggressiveness even more because I know Sherrone got a lot of heat for some of his decisions on Saturday.
Yeah, and then again, go to Nebraska, and he won't be available that week or after that game, and then they have the bye. So it'll be interesting when the next time we'll hear from Sherrone Moore will be. I mean, do you think it'll be leading up to Wisconsin, or will they do something during that bye week just because their head coach hasn't been around just to get his thoughts on the last 2 games? You never know with Michigan, but it will be interesting.
Yeah, we probably won't get Sharon in the lead up to the what or to certainly Nebraska, but yeah, we'll get him probably in the bye would be my guess. Typically, the coaches do talk during the bye. I would think that would be a good opportunity for Sharon to again, like you said, give us a recap on what's going on and his thoughts, especially if they go 2-0. I think there'll be some gloating to be had, and they'll be in certainly a better mood than they are this week. But before we move on, one more note on Biff. I happened to FOIA back in March some contracts for some assistant coaches and staffers and everything else. Biff was on that list. I was just curious how much he was being paid. As we talked about earlier, he's a wealthy man. He made a lot of money in the hedge fund industry. He poured a lot of money back into college, into Baltimore high schools. And when I FOIA'd it back in March, his contract is effective February. He signed with an annual base salary, and this is probably an exclusive you're not getting anywhere else, but it's not a big deal. But I thought it was interesting. He's on an annual base salary of $45,000. So I got to think, as things stand right now, he's probably the cheapest head coach in college football. So that's a little nugget I was able to pluck out this spring.
That is a great nugget, and it's something that we talked about this. Now we have a lot of experience, years talking about interim head coaches and suspended coaches and other guys filling in. Is he getting the head coach salary now, Sherrone Moore's salary, prorated for these 2 weeks or 8 days, I guess it is. We never really got an answer on that the last times around, or did we?
I don't recall, but
I
I
don't
will
think that they got. I don't think it changed.
I will say this, the NCAA did state that the Sherrone Moore suspension, these 2 games, will not count on his record. So
Oh,
this will
okay,
go in Biff Poggi's record, head coaching record, which certainly could use some help after his last 2
sure.
seasons at Charlotte.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, the way Michigan handled it last time also kind of strange. Some of the games did count against Harbaugh, some didn't. It was kind of strange how that all worked out. Okay, that's enough about Biff. Let's talk about anything else we learned from players or coaches this week. Talk to Sherrone, talk to the offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey today, talk to several contributors on both sides of the ball. Yeah, what stood out to you guys?
We should probably go through the injuries updates first. I mean, there were a lot, we had coming out of that game Saturday. Among them, one of the biggest ones is Giovanni Ohadi, right? Starting left guard, came out with the ankle injury. Ryan saw him on the sideline during the game and didn't look good. I think you said he had a boot on his ankle. He looked like yeah, and he was limping off the field. He didn't look like he was in good shape, but Sharon did say this week that he was day to day. Made it sound he didn't necessarily rule him out for Saturday. So I guess it's possible he plays. I'd be surprised if he does, just given the nature of the opponent, and they got bigger fish to fry here next week against Nebraska. But so he's day to day. Sherrone made it sound like tight end Marlon Klein could potentially come back Saturday. Again, it's another situation where given the opponent, you wonder if they're going to hold him out another week. But it sounded like he was trending in the right direction. So that there are 2 big injury updates there. Brandon Hillman came back. Samaj Morgan came back. I feel like I'm missing one name from the injury report, but
Shamari Earls is probably coming back.
a name we haven't seen yet. So I think we are curious to see what he looks like. Michigan they've been lacking depth at the corner spot. I think it sounds like Josiah Edmond was dealing with an injury. They can get him back. So I think they're more optimistic about the cornerback spots here this week than they have been the last couple weeks, because they've been fairly shallow there. Just a few options. They've been leaning on a lot of safeties in the secondary. So Michigan's, I think, crossing their fingers and then get healthier, whether it's this week or certainly going into Big Ten play next week.
Yeah, I mean the Gio Ahadi injury and the Zeke Berry injury both right away didn't look very good. But yeah, I guess Zeke almost probably could have came back in last game according to Sherrone Moore too. So he could be ready to go for next week. And if Gio's not out long term, that should be huge because I think the offensive line really struggled. I mean, even when he was in the game, I don't think they were playing very well. But when he left, it was a struggle with a phobia in there. Or it didn't really matter who was in there. It was a tough game overall for the offensive line. So overall, at least on the injury front, looking pretty optimistic for Michigan.
Life is beautiful and fragile. We fall. We get tired. And sometimes we get sick. But with Corewell Health, we are also strong. We fight disease. We battle cancer. We come together. We come back. We push forward. When the body breaks, we break through. Corewell Health. We can.
All right, so that's the injury report. But yeah, anything else outside of that kind of caught your ear that a player or a coach said this week?
A lot of stuff going on. I mean, Sharon and the players were asked a lot about Bryce Underwood's legs. I mean, that's remains a huge topic this week of whether Michigan should unleash him, whether they're going to unleash him. Sharon seems to be not necessarily dying on the hill, but like he's adamant, like they feel like they need a second quarterback. He's reluctant to like run Bryce, a lot because again, there's the risk of injury. And we've talked about this, right? Like if he takes a shot or he gets knocked out of a game, who's going to fill in at quarterback? And look, it's a rightful concern. You understand it and everything else, but I think a lot of people are clamoring to see Bryce, just take the football and go. I mean, we've seen a lot of it in high school. That was the prognosis on him coming out. Like he's a dual threat quarterback. He can do a lot of things well. It sounded like Michigan had some design stuff Saturday. I think one play got blown up. A couple plays they didn't work out. It sounds like Bryce has been given RPO, uh, freedom, I guess, so to speak, to run those things. So we'll see where that goes in the future. I'd be surprised to see a lot of that Saturday against CMU. Again, you feel like you can get by without doing that type of stuff. But certainly, there's been a lot of criticism, a lot of pressure on Sherrone, whether they want to run the football with Bryce or not. Chip Lindsey, the OC, sounded more open to doing that. It sounded like he was aware, like, yeah, we know he can do it. It's in the playbook. It's in the playbook. We'll eventually get there. But that's certainly been a huge topic this week, and at least in just the fan circles.
Yeah, and I was curious too, and I went back to watch some more of Bryce's high school tape, and it's like he definitely can run the ball and has some elusiveness to him too for being 6'4", 228 pounds. And I spoke to his high school coach Kelvin Norman too. It was like, I'm like, are these like designed runs that he was doing, or is a lot of just him scrambling and off schedule and picking up yards? He's like, well, mostly off schedule scrambling, but like we definitely ran him, but he does understand Michigan being a little bit more cautious because you're not going up against guys you're towering over as a quarterback. You're going up against Big Ten defenders, which is a higher risk for injury. But what he was surprised about is just Michigan still being, even just with some of the throws and play calling, like a lot of behind the scrimmage passes or short passes. It's like this guy can make every throw. Let him let loose a little bit and get comfortable and kind of learn on the fly. Like these are non-conference games for a reason. You open up on the road against Nebraska, kind of let him sling it a little bit. If he makes some mistakes, he makes some mistakes, but he's confident that Bryce will learn from those and get better from it. And we saw a very cautious approach against Oklahoma and even New Mexico. So we'll see if that changes at all this week. And then, yeah, Aaron mentioned it briefly about not having a number two. It seems like Sherrone Moore and Chip Lindsey are kind of contradicted themselves a little again about the status of Mikey Keene. Sherrone Moore said, I think on Monday, that it seemed like, yeah, he's in the mix practicing and is healthy and taking reps. And then Chip Lindsey said Wednesday again that he's still kind of working his way back from injury, hinting at like he's still not 100%. And the fact that, yeah, Sherrone basically said you need a number two. And you would think that if Mikey Keene was healthy, he would be able to have established himself on the depth chart as the backup at this point. And it's still Jaden Davis. So a little bit of confusion there. So it would be interesting to know just where Mikey Keene is at as far as his health.
Yeah, he was dressed and he was the fourth quarterback out of the locker room Saturday at Oklahoma. So it makes you wonder, like, right, if push comes to shove, could they use him? Could they put him in the games? My guess would be yes, but you just wonder what type of shape or capacity he's in. And look, quite frankly, whether he had the rightful shot at it or not, he did lose a starting quarterback job to Bryce Underwood. So at this point, there's going to be no change. I mean, Bryce is the guy. There's no doubt about it. He's got the highest ceiling. He's probably the highest floor too, and they're going to roll with him. So either way, Michigan's got stuff to figure out this week. Given the opponent, given CMU on tap, Michigan should coast to victory, but they've got to improve in a couple areas. One, the run game, just churning out those regular, runs, and B, improving the offensive line. You guys hinted at it earlier. Like there just wasn't enough push up front in the run game. I thought the offensive line held up relatively well in the past. I think they graded out pretty good, generally speaking. But like they need more push up front. They need to show their physicality, and they're able to open some lanes for the running backs, because quite frankly, we saw it Saturday, outside from that 75-yard touchdown run by Justice Haynes, there just wasn't much else. And you're not going to be able to get away with that once they get into the meat of Big Ten play. You might be able to do it Saturday against CMU, but having to do it having to go on the road against Nebraska and going up against a Washington, et cetera, they've got improvements to make in both of those areas.
Yeah, if I had a problem, as I said on the last podcast, with the offense on Saturday, it was more just a lack of downfield passing than a lack of running. But I would hope and expect for more of both. Again, Michigan has always seemed to be like, quarterback can get hurt. You got to protect your quarterback. While other teams just run their quarterback and win because of it. Like it's very hard to defend a mobile quarterback. It's just another part of the game. And yeah, in the NFL, you don't see it as much, but college you still do. I mean, it's a common thing to have running quarterbacks, and yet Michigan has always been a little more cautious about it. Now, if you have a guy who's just great at throwing, then that's fine. But and then Michigan did with JJ McCarthy, and they do with Bryce Underwood, I think. So they need to lean on that skill. Then you got to pick some
You gotta factor too, and I was thinking about this earlier, like, I think the money does play a factor here, right? You're paying Bryce Underwood so much money. There's so many expectations around him. I do wonder if they're treating him a little like, a little cautiously because of that, right? Like, you don't want your, like, your huge investment here, to, get injured and then not have anything else beyond that. Maybe this situation changes if Keane is fully healthy and he's playing well, but as Sherrone said, and it was an interesting comment I thought, and he said it a couple times now. If you don't have a second quarterback, you're hesitant about running your first. I think that spoke volumes of the state of the Michigan's quarterback room as they sit right now. But you're right. Like, if you want to win football games, you want to play your strengths. And one of Bryce Underwood's strengths, there's several, is his legs. At least we've been told that. We saw it in high school. It's an interesting situation because I get Michigan's coaching staff's perspective on it, right? Like, this isn't high school football. This is college grown man football, and the risk of him getting injured is heightened if he tries to get that extra yard or takes a hit from some eager defender. So they're in an interesting spot. I think they have to pick and choose their situations at this point. And look, we've also, I think, the fan base and us as reporters also have to step back and also realize too, this is 2 games in the Bryce Underwood era. We've got like 3 years to go here. I think people are getting over anxious or antsy about this. I mean, I think folks got to settle down and let this first season play out.
Did you see Larry Ellison's evaluation today? I don't think money should be any sort of issue for the Michigan program moving forward if he wants to open up his pocketbook again.
Michigan won their first game handily, and they lost on the road in some competitive game to another top 25 team. Like, it's fine. We all predicted them. Well, 3 of us predicted them to lose. But before the season, we all said coin flip, like this wasn't a game they should win by any means. So, yeah, I think things are fine. With that being said, time to move on to Central Michigan. Preview time. Let's do it. All right, the Chippewas come to town. Michigan has never lost to them. They've never lost to any of the directional Michigan schools, as I affectionately call them. And they've got a nice win streak against Michigan State as well. So as Jim Harbaugh used to say, the state championship, it's certainly that trophy resides in Ann Arbor. Central Michigan won at San Jose State, which was a nice win to open the year. Then they lost at Pitt last Saturday. One-score game late in the third quarter before Pitt pulled away for a 45-17 win. And kind of the most unique thing about Central Michigan, another first year, head coach, as was the case with, New Mexico. That was a coach they at least had head coaching experience first year at the school. This is first period. He plays three quarterbacks. And I asked him, like, that's not a normal thing. Can you kind of explain the thought process there? And he's like, yeah, it's not like we have one that just comes in for this package or that package. They're all just good at everything, but they all have their own little flavor on the offense. And he said that means it's like 3 times as many looks for a defense to prepare for, because whatever personnel package they have times it by 3 because the quarterback changes. I asked Michigan linebackers coach Brian Jean-Marie today if that's true, if that's a fair way to put it, and he said yes. But I don't know. None of these quarterbacks were particularly exciting to me on tape or statistically, so I'm not sure Michigan will fear them all that much.
No, and the proverbial phrase "throw in the kitchen sink," like that's what CMU is, I think, trying to do offensively, right? Like Joe Labus, I think, is their most experienced guy, a transfer from Labus from Iowa. He's been injured, I think. He's been banged up. I think it was a way to keep him on board. The CMU's, I think, right now trying to work with what they got from a personnel standpoint, as we talked about last week. Drinkle's a former O-line coach at Army. They want to run the football. He wants to try and control the line of scrimmage, and I think this is their way of trying to do that, scratch and claw and get every yard and keep defenses on their toes, because they realize the personnel just isn't there. So it's an interesting. It is going to force Michigan to prepare for, like you said, 3 different quarterbacks. They have multiple I think 2 running backs they lean on pretty evenly. So it's their way to try and muck things up and try to confuse defenses. Now, whether it does on Saturday, we'll see. I mean, Michigan or CMU, excuse me, they ran the football very good in the first half against San Jose State in their opener. They got shut down in the second. And aside from the quarterbacks against Pitt on Saturday, their running backs didn't do much of anything. So, I think Michigan's defense should be able to hold up. I think it's to come down whether how many points Michigan wins this game is going to come down to their offense, how well their offense looks, because CMU has forced some turnovers. They forced, I think, 2 against San Jose State in the opener. They did force interception last week against Pitt. If CMU can play a clean game, I think they'll be okay. But CMU's just going to try and run the football and scratch and claw for every yard they can get.
Yeah, speaking of proverbial phrases, I mean, if you have multiple quarterbacks, you don't have any, and that's kind of what I'm thinking here with CMU. I mean, if you had a guy that you were really comfortable with, you would common wisdom would say you would roll with him. So I don't think Michigan's defense will have much trouble at all against the CMU offense. I like that when Michigan plays the in-state MAC schools too. I think that's good for the state. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a perfect opportunity for Michigan to get back on track here and feel good heading into Big Ten play.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Central Michigan's going to try to, I mean, they're going to run the ball because that runs the clock as well. I mean, it's no secret when you're a huge underdog, as they are, 27, 28 points in this game, you want to shorten that game and have as few possessions as possible, as few snaps as possible, to give yourself the best chance to be in it in the fourth quarter. So I don't see that happening. I'm willing to fire away with the first pick here. I'll say Michigan 41, Central Michigan 13. I think they do get in the end zone, but other than that, it's a couple of field goals and that's it. Pretty dominant ho-hum performance. I think Michigan would try to open it up a little bit, but maybe not. There's no real reason to. Then you don't have to, unless you're trying to just generate some confidence. Their goal is not to show us anything and prove to us they could do it. So if they want to wait till Nebraska or where they, that's fine too. But I do think, Underwood is efficient. The offense hums and Michigan gets a blowout win before the Big Ten opener.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go. I don't know what my specific score prediction is going to be yet, but I do think Michigan covers relatively easily. I mean, it's very rare to see a Michigan team not favored by more than 30 points against a MAC school or a team of this caliber. So I think with Sherrone not being on the sidelines, with how last game ended up, they might be pushing the gas pedal a little bit more too than usual. So I think Michigan covers in this one.
I think Michigan covers, and I think they shut them out. I'm going to say 35-0. CMU can't throw the football. I have a hard time envisioning the running game getting going for them, and I think this is an opportunity for Michigan's offense to try and iron some things out. I'm going to say 35-0. Maybe they might get off to a slow start. But there's no reason to pull any of the starters at this point, given the way things transpired last week. I think Michigan was frustrated over the way they tackled. I think this is last week against Oklahoma. I think this is an opportunity for them to bounce back. So I'm going to say Michigan 35, CMU 0. Their field goal kicking isn't very good either. They struggled against San Jose State. So I'm going to say a shutout.
Bold prediction. I like it. Listeners, send us your picks. I won't get these guys involved, but you can email me. It's acon1@mlive.com. You can shoot me a note on Twitter. I'm not very active on there, but I'll check it. I'll check my mentions for the scores. It's at Andrew Kahn, Kahn.
Yeah, make sure it's the right Acon.
Yeah, right. Yes, that is true. Or else our Detroit Red Wings writer, Ansar Khan, will get that, but he usually forwards it to me, so that's fine too. But yeah, send us your picks, and it'll make it a little weekly competition. The best one, I'll mention your name on air if you'd like. But yeah, you'll see our official scores in a post on mlive.com/Wolverines on Friday. We'll see if Aaron changes his. We'll see if I change mine. I like what I threw out there, and Ryan, you'll have to give a specific number, of course, in that picks post. Plenty of content still to come on mlive.com/Wolverines leading up to Michigan's home game against Central Michigan on Saturday. Thanks for listening.